You hear that? Actually, I'm turning down, fuckers.
Holy shit. Wow. That's a first.
He didn't really do it.
I didn't really do it. Yeah, I just said it. Yeah.
He's got that fake knob that...
I just gave it the eye.
Do one of those.
The creative input of these session guys cannot be overstated. It can't be overstated.
Well, Waddy's still getting dressed.
I guess so.
I guess he can't get that bracelet on again.
He's on the phone.
Yeah. It's like freaking out.
Eventually he will reveal himself. Or will be revealed.
Yeah. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
In the early 70s, you couldn't pick up an album and look at the liner notes without seeing these guys' names.
Where were you? What does it take to put on a shirt? Fuck off. Yeah, fuck you.
Everybody face it.
There's nobody anywhere who I would respect what they have to say about rock and roll more than these four guys. Nobody.
This builds up the anticipation.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome to the stage the immediate family.
Have fun, guys. See you later.
One of the things they say, which is hysterical but true, is they say we're the best cover band alive. And all the covers they're playing are all the hit songs that they produced or wrote. I have over 100 gold and platinum records, and they probably played on 95% of them. Just to give you a number.
Shit has hit the fan.
I feel the sky tumbling down, a tumbling down, a tumbling down, a tumbling down, a tumbling down, tumbling down.
In the late 50s, it was all about the face and the image. Cut a track and put that face and image on a record.
Especially in the first part of the 60s, not a lot of people were writing their own material. You would record material written by other people, and the record companies often had a lot to say about what songs an artist recorded.
There's a lot of things I want.
1965 was much more a year of the Brill building. Think of all the great songs that came out of all that great writing from just those writers that didn't go on to be artists.
They would give the songs to the artists, and then they had this group of musicians who were this mainstay of the time called the Wrecking Crew.
Very seasoned, well-read musicians.
They would go in and cut 3 or 4 songs in a session, and those would go on to become the pop hits of the day.
The only thing that's constant in art is change. The Wrecking Crew, it had its time, and its time passed.
In the late 60s and early 70s, the singer-songwriter began to emerge. People writing their own material, recording their own material, having a little more control over what happened in the studio.
In a way, these new independent players that were brought in by new artists like Carole King in those days, in a way the baton was handed to them.
Russ Kunkel, Lee Sklar, Denny Korchmar, Waddy. And they weren't the most famous players in the world.
They were just musicians we knew. And they gradually became legendary session musicians.
I would buy records just because they were on it. I didn't know the music until I'd bought the record because they were on it, and then I heard it.
That was so great. I said, okay, I'm done.
I'm done.
I'll be at the hotel.
That'll work. That'll work.
I'll be drinking champagne the rest of the night. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, that's one of the things about this is that we got to play and meet. We got to meet and play with our heroes.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
I can't. You know, I'm still in shock that I got to play with some of the people I idolized.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is a big part of doing this for me. You know.
One of us is changing, or maybe we've just stopped trying. And it's too late, baby, now it's too late. Though we really
I'm born in New York City, and I grew up in the suburbs, Westchester County. When I was 10 years old, my mother bought me a Stella guitar, and she thought I would look cute with a guitar. So I took the thing and I banged on it, and I took a few lessons, and I struggled with it and hated it and everything like that. And rock and roll hit around 52. The first time I heard Elvis Presley, I couldn't believe my ears. That was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. Elvis and Little Richard and Fats Domino, it just really spoke to me. My parents hated it, of course, as a lot of parents did at the time, but I loved it. And I felt that was like the direction I was going to go in. What really happened was when I learned the 3 chords with which you could play every rock and roll song, that's when the heavens parted, and that's when I realized, man, this is it.
Kennedy Airport.
I was really into soul music and blues, and the Beatles, they suggested a path where you could translate R&B and soul music into a guitar combo, as opposed to horns, B3 organ, background singers. Create a band that was all guitars, but played the same kind of music that I loved. Every summer, my family, right after school was out, we'd get in the car and drive up to Martha's Vineyard and spend the whole summer up there. And that's where I met James, was up there. And both of us were just kind of lollygagging around the porch of the Menemsha store. And he and I started hanging out just as pals.
Cooch and I met there and started hanging out. I was 13, I think, when we met.
James and I used to get around on Martha's Vineyard by hitchhiking, like all us kids did, you know. At one point, we're walking down the street trying to get a ride. He just starts singing, and he starts singing Ray Charles's Hallelujah, I Love Her So. Let me tell you about a girl I know. Wow, this guy can sing. I mean, he can really sing. And I was astonished. Him and I used to sit around and play folk music and blues, a lot of blues.
Well, there's something in the way she moves or looks my way.
And by the time he was 16 or 17, he was starting to write songs.
That seems to leave this troubled world behind.
I always wanted to be a rock and roll star, but I wanted to be in a band. I didn't want it to be just me. I wanted to be in a hit band, and so did everyone.
I didn't want it to be a solo artist. It's too lonely. Too much work.
Too much responsibility.
Too much responsibility.
Yeah. It was never even really a concept, really,
Right.
to, you come up playing in bands, you figure you want your band to be the one that makes it, and you're part of this, machine that works.
in Chicago on a rainy day.
Well, the King Bees was first. That was the first band I started as soon as I graduated high school.
All day and night this cat just sat around in blue. And then
When we came to tour America, somebody would organize a Peter and Gordon backup band. Somebody supplied us with or introduced us to the King Bees, and of course, Danny. And we also became close personal friends.
The King Bees, shortly after that, kind of sank because we couldn't get arrested, we couldn't get anything going. But I was fortunate enough to continue a relationship with my pal, Peter Asher.
In 1966, Cooch encouraged me to come down to New York.
And he stayed with me in my place and ended up getting his own place, and we started a band, And the band was the Flying Machine.
sleep
I actually wanted to call it the James Taylor Band, but he didn't want to stick his neck out that far. We did really well at the Night Owl Cafe down there in the village, and we played there for, I don't know, almost a year. One night, Buffalo Springfield came in. Our jaws hit the floor. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. It was so good. So much so that our bass player said, well, we're never going to be that good. We might as well quit. And when that band broke up, James decided that he was going to go try his luck in London. So I gave him Peter Asher's phone number and address.
And as luck would have it, Peter had just accepted a position at the Beatles' new label, Apple Records. It was just perfect timing, you know.
James essentially called me up out of the blue, played me a demo tape he'd made in London. I said to him, I think this is brilliant. You know, I love your guitar playing, I love your singing, I love your songs. Would you like a record deal? And he said, yes, please, I'd love one. And that was kind of it.
I'd really run out of gas in New York City. It was not a friendly environment. It was freezing cold. I remember walking down, trying to get back to my pad, walking down the street. It's snowing. I'm carrying an amp and a guitar, and I can't get a cab, and I'm freezing my ass off. When I was offered a gig to go out to LA, I said, sure, you know. The band called Clear Light. They needed a new guitar player right away, and auditioned for them and got the gig. And away we went. When I first moved out there, I lived in Laurel Canyon, and everyone was dressed wearing fringe jackets and groovy hats, and I dug it immediately. One of the first people I met when I moved out here was David Crosby. And then I met Stills after that, and everyone was coming by. That's where I met Jackson, and Joni Mitchell came by. And I realized that I'd walked into what was a terrific music community. Now, right down the road on Wonderland Avenue was Carole. She was living there with her daughters and with Charlie Larkey. And so I always used to go down there because I loved Carole so much and I wanted to work on her music. And we all grew together at that point.
I'd like to invite a very good friend of mine to be on TV with me, Mr. Danny Cooch.
James and I made one album for Apple. Apple was falling apart. So I sat down with Joe Smith to make a deal with Warner Brothers. I moved here in 1970 to Los Angeles in order to get a band together for those sessions. We knew we wanted Danny. I met Carole through Cooch and asked her if she would consider playing on James's record. I was looking for a drummer and found Russ.
I was playing with a man named John Stewart. Peter came and listened to me play and hired me for the Sweet Baby James album.
John Stewart never quite forgave me, to be honest. He would laughingly, you know, accuse me of stealing his drummer, but there was a little edge to it, and because I sort of did. And I remember Russ would always, like, at that time he would show up early, you know, set up his own drums himself. And when I went in got there for the very first session, he was already all set up and polishing his cymbals. And, you know, it was a new experience for all of us.
The first time I saw him play, I was astonished that he could have this dynamic. He'd play this really quiet, solid, but quiet, and then have these big toms happen and punctuate the song.
Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things coming my way this time around now.
My older brother, he's the one that got me started. He had a band that rehearsed in the house. One day he just sat me on his knee and put the sticks in my hand and, you know, moved my hands around, and I was bit. I joined the orchestra in the 5th grade. I would just start riffing on the snare drum, you know, kind of imitating Gene Krupa. Poorly. And I was probably told more than once to not do that because it was disrupting the class. And I did it one more time extra loud, and that was it. You know, I was ejected from the 5th grade orchestra.
Settled in its ways here, all but California.
I I was living in Southern California. I was in various different bands, and we played surf music because that was really big, you know, in the 60s. Hugely influenced by the Beatles because no one had ever heard anything like that before. But I just had this feeling that, wow, that is so different than anything that I've ever heard. That means that if they can do that, maybe I can be part of something like that too. The summer of my 11th grade, the moment that I decided that I wanted to be a musician and nothing else, my mom was very supportive of that. We didn't have a lot of money. So that summer she said to me, she said, you know, Russ, you're gonna have to get a job this summer. A block away, there was a Signal gas station. I got a job there for the summer. And you know, at the end of the workday, your hands are absolutely black and it's summer and you've sweated your ass off the whole day. And at that moment, when I finished my last day, I said, that's it. I'm gonna do this music thing, because I ain't doing that. Came to Hollywood with a band that I was in Long Beach called Things to Come. We were the opening act at the Whiskey A Go-Go for 19 weeks.
Somebody told me that I had to hear this kid drummer from this little band down on the coast. And I said, sure. And it was the Things to Come. The band sucked. And Russell was fucking glorious.
It's like most bands do, they have a shelf life. Musicians are constantly unemployed until you get your next gig. My wife, Leah, was gonna have a baby, and so I needed to get busy. That's when I decided I'm gonna try to do this, be a session musician thing. Anytime I went and did a session, one of my goals was to find out what's needed and wanted from the artist or the producer to create a situation where hopefully they would hire me back. So I never had an attitude that I didn't care or it was my way or the highway. I wanted to please them. My main goal was to not get fired.
There is a young cowboy, he lives on the range.
All of us met over at Peter Asher's pad in his living room.
It's the first time I met Danny Kortchmar sitting, playing acoustic guitar. And I put my drum set up and we rehearsed the songs for Sweet Baby James.
We rehearsed there in the afternoon and went in the studio at night and did the songs. We were relying to some degree on the creativity of the musicians.
Peter expected all of us to think like producers. In other words, we were supposed to play stuff that was going to help the record.
You know, what Cooch contributes, or Russ, that can take it in its own direction.
And then from there, everything, the dominoes started to fall.
I was 15, and I was heavily influenced by James Taylor. He had impacted me in that I'd learned everything I could off the record.
And I remember getting the record and just playing it over and over and over again.
I mean, James was like the catalyst for this new movement in music.
Once he got on the cover of Time magazine, yeah.
Yeah, it changed dramatically.
Right, James became this huge star. I don't think any of us, we weren't sitting around going, oh, it's going to be huge. Oh, it's going to be. We didn't think like that.
It ain't like that. No.
You know, we think that's a good song. The next one, that's a good song too.
Right.
That's not such a good song. But that one is a good song.
Yeah.
That's all we thought about it at the moment. You know, we don't sit around thinking about, we're going to be a star. This guy's going to be a huge star.
I think we were just being quiet so no one yanked us out of the position that we were already in.
Good point. Exactly.
Keep it on the low down.
Yeah.
After the record became very successful, I wanted to get the whole band who played on the record to come and play the troubadour.
Right now I'd like to bring out some other people to help me out a little bit. Mr. Russell Kunkel and Mr. Leland Sklar.
Yeah, I mean, for me, meeting all you guys, I came in slightly after the fact that, that album had been cut and the gig at the Troubadour had been booked to do. And I met James at our Wolfgang rehearsal. John Fishback, he was just a friend of the band. One of our rehearsals, he brought a friend of his along with him, who turned out to be James Taylor.
Because I distinctly remember him calling me, telling me that he'd found, the bass player of his dreams.
They tracked me down and they asked me if I would play this gig with them. And I said, oh, I'd love to. And that was where I met Cooch for the first time, and I met Russ. I was playing one show with the guy who was still in college, and next thing I know, it turned into 50+ years.
Mm-hmm.
Leland who?
And you know, Lee, I mean, the way he plays, it's like he literally makes love to the bass.
So Leland is one of the greatest examples ever of living in two worlds. Leland Sklar is a genius bass player. Listen to Dr. My Eyes. Then go listen to all my TV bullshit, and he would come in and read his butt off and play his butt off, and then be able to go out on the road and be authentic.
My earliest memories about music really were the Liberace show. My parents, they were big fans of Liberace. I was about 4 years old, and I'd sneak around the corner while they were watching it, and I'd lay there and I'd watch it too. And I just became enamored with the whole kind of panache of him sitting there in his tux and his big rings and a candelabra. For some reason, when I sat down at a piano, I had an affinity. I was a classical snob when I studied piano. I didn't know anything about rock and roll, didn't care. I was really classically trained. It wasn't until the Beatles that I really turned my head around and thought there was something more to look at. When I went into junior high school at Birmingham, and when I arrived, I had this kind of moderate arrogance that I was going to be your piano player because I had had these awards from the Hollywood Bowl Association and all this crap. And I went in, and the music teacher, Ted Lynn, he brought out a bass, and showed me how to hold it, and I plucked a note and felt that vibration run through it, and I just went, sold. And the thing that was hard was, I didn't have a bass. We had a piano at home, so they would let me, carry the bass home from school. A little kid dragging a string bass, a couple of miles home. It was kind of like walking through snow and bare feet this deep, in the dead of winter. Since I was a little kid, I've dealt with a profound low self-esteem. My flesh crawls when people start complimenting me, because I don't think I deserve it.
Is the beard part of it?
Could be a little hiding. But the last time I actually was totally clean-shaven was when they gave me my high school diploma. That's the last time I saw my upper lip was 65.
Have you ever noticed, ladies and gentlemen, that every generation has had a particular kind of music they considered all their very own? Like now it's rock and roll.
I like the responsibility of the bass, and you can be the guy in the back. You don't have to be the guy up front, hanging it all out. I knew I'd always play music, but it never occurred to me that I would actually be able to have this be my vocation rather than an avocation. Being a musician, it was always, they'd kind of look at musicians as like the fringe element. Everybody would look at what you do as it's your hobby. At some point, you got to get serious and think about a job, be a doctor or an electrician or a plumber or a lawyer or something like that. When all hell breaks loose, you stand on a corner and be an executive, and I'll stand there and play music, and let's see who gets paid.
Carole, Denny, Lee, and I toured the Sweet Baby James album with James, and she'd been writing these songs, and he really encouraged her to get out there and do it.
She gets introduced. Well, I introduced her to James and Peter, and there started to be this whole circle of people who were working together. Russ, Lee, of course. Carole was there as the piano player. So one night, I don't know whether it was prepared or not, but he says, "This is Carole King. She's written some incredibly great songs. Carole, sing a few songs for the audience." And she didn't know what to expect and was terrified. But she sang the first song, whichever it was, and the audience goes nuts. They start applauding and yelling. The next thing that happens is Doug Weston gets on the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, we're going to have to clear the hall. There's been a bomb scare."
Whether they were freaking out, I couldn't tell, because I remember before they filed out, the words that popped out of my mouth when he said, "I think there may be, they say there's a bomb in here, as long as it's not me."
First time. That was at the Troubadour.
At the
Yeah,
Troubadour.
at the Troubadour, yes.
Lou Adler signed her to A&M, and the next thing you know, Carole's in the studio cutting Tapestry.
Tapestry was all new for me. You know, I wanted as much of Carole as possible.
All we did was take the magic of what we would do in a living room, take it into the studio.
I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the sky tumbling down.
With Cooch, I could really communicate and could translate that into actual playing. Cooch can play anything from the 40s to the future.
Tapestry, the whole thing was done in 3 weeks.
3 songs in one day, and we didn't piece together the best.
No,
like
it wasn't
we do now.
overdubbed. It was live.
Move, you look so unhappy. And
we would know when we had the magic take. Because when we got it, it was magic, it was the first time, it was fresh, it was new, it was unique, and everybody clicked.
I was playing solos live. Carole would just say, oh, play a solo there. Okay. I wasn't thinking about it too much. I just played off the top of my head. It had to be a sad, kind of melancholy solo.
Solos Cooch played on Carole's record, they were brilliant because they were a little bit jazzy in a way and not strictly rock and roll.
I'm glad I didn't have another shot at that solo because I would have pissed my pants realizing that, you know, everyone was going to hear it. But I didn't know that I was going to be listening to it in every supermarket, every drugstore, forever.
Every day for the rest of your life.
That's right. Yeah.
1971 was a crazy year. Danny Korchmar and I were working on Carole King's Tapestry album, and at the same time, Leland and Danny and I were working on James Taylor's Mudslide Slim album.
All you got to do is call, and I'll be there.
It was a busy time.
Sure was, yeah.
I was an avid record buyer, and I bought records by people I liked, but also by the guys behind. You'd follow certain people, you know.
I was transfixed by what those guys did to support the songs, and that changed the whole way I thought about what a session guy does, how to support a song, what a band does, what a bass player does, what a drummer does.
I remember seeing Russ Kunkel's name on records. Of course, you know, the James Taylor records. Of course, back in those days, you didn't always see those guys. You know, it wasn't like their pictures were in the fan magazines all the time.
Peter was the one who instigated putting musicians' names on albums. He was the first guy to do it.
It was a subtler view of how this music was made. You started to learn that different people played different ways and what was the difference and how did it sound.
I just remember seeing these 3 names on records all the time. And drummer.
Who are those punks?
Well, you, drummer, bass player, fine. Who's this guy, Cooch? Who are these fucking guys? Who's this guy, Cooch? Why is he on these records? How does he get all these gigs?
Well, I'd been hearing about Waddy, and he'd been hearing about me, but we hadn't run into each other. Lou Adler called both Waddy and I to play on a Tim Curry album. As soon as he walked in, I took one look at him. It was love at first sight. It was almost like, I know this guy. I know this guy. Because I could tell just his attitude, the way he walked in. I just knew what he was all about. He looked like a Muppet, like an adorable Muppet.
So, of course, the second we met, we loved each other. And it was like the beginning of our, aside from our personal relationship, our guitar relationship. We instantly knew what to do, what the other guy wouldn't be doing.
So they were like considered the LA guys, but there was something that was different about them. And I was like, what is so different about their playing that doesn't necessarily, it's not the typical LA kind of thing. And then I found out they were 2 Jews from New York. And I said, well, there you have it. My people. Now I get it.
I would turn around, I'd watch him playing, I'd just go like, he's extraordinary. You know, he's just extraordinary.
At night, the stars, they put on a show.
At 5 years old, I saw somebody on TV playing a guitar. My mom was standing there, and I said, what is that? What's this guy doing? She goes, that's a guitar. And I went, oh, okay, that's what I want to do. And she went, you're 5 years old, what are you talking about? And I said, that's it, that's all I want. Age 9, I got a guitar for Christmas or Hanukkah. And it was Les Paul. Being a rotten kid, I went, this ain't the one I want. No, it was the yellow kind, not the black one that I wanted. Started taking lessons at age 9. All this really amazing guitar stuff started slapping me in the head. And there was Duane Eddy and Carl Perkins. I had a band called Twice Nicely. I got a phone call from Ahmet Ertegun with my demo playing in the background and him telling me, I love this fucking record. I love this fucking record. Welcome to Atlantic. And then a day later, Bud Cowsill tells me, yeah, the Atlantic deal's not happening. I broke up the band shortly after that. And I decided at that point, I said, I want to be a studio musician. I want to do that. I'm good enough to do that. The timing when I moved to California, right when everything was beginning to happen here, it was like Liverpool was when Beatles came out.
It was somewhere around the beginning of '72 when I first met Waddy. And we started working on Buckingham Nicks. We were just trying to make this record, but Waddy was a super big part of it.
We're sitting in this restaurant, and there's Dave Crosby like 3 tables away from me, and I'm going, this is like incredible. I mean,
Waddy walks up to me and he says, how do you do this? How do we do this? We want to be rock stars. We want to play. And I loved him right away. He was a funny little guy. He could play.
I was doing sessions, and I got a call from someone to talk about sessions, but in that call, he said, oh, by the way, the Everly Brothers are looking for a guitar player for a tour. I said, well, that's my gig. I mean, I know every song. I know every vocal part. I know every guitar part. I went and auditioned. The door opens, and this guy comes in with a fedora hat on and a seersucker jacket and shades, and Warren, Zevon, that's where I met Warren. And he goes, okay, we're going to play the song through, and then you'll play it with us. I said, you could leave that step out, really, because, I know these songs backwards and forwards. He goes, no, we're going to do it like the way I'm telling you. I went, okay, fine. But he goes, okay, and it's time for you to do it. And I went, okay, great, but you're not playing it right. He goes, what do you mean I'm not playing? I'm the musical director of this band. I said, yeah, well, that may be, but it goes like this. And I played it, and the bass player, who'd been with the Everlys for a long time, goes, hey, yeah, that's right, that's how it goes. Begrudgingly, he goes, well, I guess he got the job. I got a call from Lou Adler's office, and Lou wanted me to come play on a record date. I'm driving into SIR in my old 57 Chevy, and this other 57 Chevy's coming out of SIR, and we literally stopped in the middle of Santa Monica Boulevard, right there at Vine, and people are honking horns and everything. He goes, are you Waddy? And I went, yeah. Are you Russ? He goes, yeah, man. He says, I gotta go, but we're gonna be seeing a lot of each other, man. And that's when the 4 of us got together for the first time. And we did her Thoroughbred record, be Russell and Leland and Denny. When I walked past Carole in the hallway, she looks at me. She goes, are we related? I hope so, but I don't think so.
As soon as I played with them, I went, this is it, these guys. This is fantastic,
Who's this fucking guy, Cooch?
And you still feel that way?
I do, yeah. Well, I know who you are now. I know how to spell Korchmar.
I think the fact that they put our names on the album jackets had a profound effect on our careers because looking back to the Wrecking Crew and the generation of players before us that didn't get credit, people had no idea that when they're listening to Mamas and the Papas and the Association and Frank Sinatra and all these artists, that it was the same bunch of musicians on all these things. But to have Peter and Lou Adler and people like that putting our names on them, all of a sudden, when people were looking to sign their artists and they would look at like a James Taylor record and see Russ and me and Crucian and stuff, they would go, it worked for him, it's bound to work for us. And man, we went for, I mean, to me, I always look at my career, I went from 0 to 100 overnight, where it was like, went from no studio experience, basically, to working around the clock.
In probably a 4 or 5 year period of time, from like 1970 to 1975.
It was unbelievable.
So much music that we all did during that period of time.
Little hands, little eyes, they walk around telling great big lies. They got
People started listening to them going, God, these guys are great players, so people started hiring them on the side to record stuff on their records.
My first job of real consequences was getting to unlock the potential in my own songs in a studio with great players.
I mean, it's maybe a naive assumption, but I'm thinking I'm going to the studio with a guy named Jackson Browne, and I thought he was going to be black. When I suddenly see this skinny little white guy, I just go, you're Jackson Browne? Wow, cool. As soon as he sat down to play, I just went, oh man, this guy's, he's got it.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. Now I want to understand.
No, I'd spend every day with either Danny or Russell or Leland in some session, or one of them here and then one of them in another one.
Oh, Carrie, get out, you can.
Being in LA at that time, we all went a little bit different directions because we worked with slightly different artists on different things, but we always ended up coming back and playing on specific things together.
While the other guys were off doing like Jon Stewart or somebody like that, or Carole or something, I ended up going off and doing this seminal, jazz fusion album that everybody looks at.
He's played on so many great things, but he played on Spectrum, Billy Cobham's Spectrum. I mean, come on, enough said.
I got spoiled pretty early from working with these brilliant songwriters. When you're working with with James and Carole and Jackson Browne, you get spoiled.
Can you see around the bend?
They're not looking at a clock. They're not thinking about how much they're making for the 3 hours. They're just musicianship. What's the best that I can do here to make this record?
The thing about those guys is they knew the right thing to play. They knew how to play with each other, and they knew how to play with us.
We were really fortunate that all these things came together in such a unique way for all of us.
Also, unlike a lot of session musicians, we were called to be ourselves. In other words, we weren't called, Waddy and I certainly, and all of us weren't called to say, oh, could you sound just like so-and-so? Could you play a part just like? Never. You can get anyone to do that. You can get a lot of guys that'll do that, and they'll do it amazingly. We were called to be us. We were like character actors. We were called to do what we already do.
So I came up in New York City as a session player about 10 years after all these guys. So they were all big influences on me. When they came up, people wanted them to play themselves. I need Waddy Wachtel in this session. I need Danny Court. By the time I got in there, they were telling us one day, be like, play like Waddy Wachtel, play like Danny Kortchmar. But nobody was saying, play like Steve Postel. Those guys had already cornered that market.
Each song is a different victim, each one is a separate patient, you can't just apply one science to it. I stopped by Roy's house and Warren was there. He goes, yeah, it's great you're here. We got to write this song. Werewolves in London. And I just got back from being in London. And I just looked at Warren and I said, you mean something like I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, walking down the streets of Soho in the rain? He goes, yeah, like that. And my friend Roy Marinell He had this lick sitting around for years, 2 years worth of this. Yeah. And I said, Roy, play that fucking lick. So many people tried versions of it, and it wasn't working. And Jorge Calderon, he said, what about Mick Fleetwood and John McVie? So I called him, and I said, hey, would you consider playing on a song with Warren and Jackson and myself? They went, we're honored. I went, honored? We're honored. So why don't you just get down here, and we'll talk about who's honored.
And across the studio, Mick's saying, now, Waddy, we're not Kunkel and Sklar, all right? Take it easy on us.
When we started, we did take one. We did take two. 9. 5 hours later, you want to hear it? And Mick goes, nah, let's just keep going, man. Let's keep going.
We played it till the sun was coming up. And Mick Fleetwood saying, Waddy, we're never done, Waddy, we're never done.
And I went, we're never done, huh? Okay. All right, let's keep going. We're never done. I'm about to count off take 60, 61. It's like, I don't know what time it is now.
And when he said, like, I think we had it in the beginning.
I think to Jackson, I went, Jackson, take 2 was good, right?
Go play let's play 2. Play us take 2.
I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, walking through the streets of Soho in the rain.
I looked at Mick, I went, Mick, we're done. That's it, it's over. That's the take. Thank you, guys.
What you found is that the best song wasn't necessarily the hits. And so you were trying to make every song the best song. If you walked into a session with artists like Randy or James or whoever, you didn't bring up the word hit. That was a no-no. I was like, we're not selling out.
I always made sure I played exactly what the producer or the artist wanted. And then sometimes I'd say, could you indulge me and let me try something else? Just see what you think. It's an alternative. And there were times where they'd go, you just made the song. That's fantastic. And then there were other times where they'd say, yeah, I'm really used to what we've got. So it's cool. My kind of mantra is everything I do is etched in mud.
Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles.
Each album became like a, what's the next thing they're gonna do? And everybody was waiting for it.
There's that fear that if you leave town, somebody else is going to take that seat and you're not going to get your gig back. And I mean, that was, this harkens back to the days of the Wrecking Crew, where they didn't go on the road with people. They made everybody's records, and if people wanted to go perform, they would have a road band to go do it. We were really lucky to have lived both sides of that fence and be able to do that.
Yeah. In the 70s, touring did become an important record-selling tool in the eyes of the record company.
Peter would put a band together, and we would rehearse a little bit. We'd go in to make the album, and then when the album came out, we'd tour, same band.
I'd like to introduce you to a few more players up here. Russell Kunkel and Lee Sklar.
And the thing that was interesting to me was there were a lot of players in town who were like, say, so what are you up to? I said, no, we're heading out for the summer. We're going to be working. And they're going, how can you do that, man? I mean, you leave town, somebody else is going to take all your gigs and all that. I said, so be it.
It's Cooch. Daniel Forsman. Why, it's Waddy. Waddy Wachtel.
You know, it just seemed like the natural thing that the people who played the music, for the record, should play it on the road.
This next tune, Cooch wrote it. I didn't write it. Cooch wrote it.
We did these huge, huge shows, and these were baseball stadiums, full. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
I played Fire and Rain 10,000 times. It's a simple couple of chords, and I don't think I've ever played it twice the same way.
Standing next to Leland on stage when we played with James, he would do stuff where I would just forget where I was. He would, how is this guy doing that? What is all that? Again, I asked him could you not play quite as great? Could you just maybe, play a note?
When people say, don't you get bored, I always go look at somewhere in that audience, somebody's hearing this for the first time, and that's who I'm playing to.
When we went on the road, I was the person who was on the bill, but it really, to me, felt like I was playing in a band.
I always looked at the road as one of the greatest gifts one could ask for of travel, because I never traveled as a kid. My family, I mean, the most we would do is maybe go to San Francisco from LA or something like that, or San Diego. So when suddenly I found myself flying around the world.
These guys were Carole's band and James's band. They then became celebrities themselves because they were seen by millions of people.
I remember playing Merriweather Post Pavilion, and we walked out on stage, and James kind of looked over at me with this kind of a scowl on his face, and I looked down, and the front row was a whole bunch of people that said Lee Sklar Fan Club T-shirts on, and he was like, I went, dude, I'm sorry, I'll try to keep a lower profile.
We were out for so long back then. End of the tour would just keep extending and extending. So we're not going home. 12 weeks, 3 months at a time, maybe. Go to the next town, I don't care where it is, doesn't matter. That piece of paper comes under the door saying, what time you gotta get up? I'll be up. I'll get on the bus.
We were on a bus that had a Continental Trailways driver in a uniform. We didn't ask anything more about it, like, did it have bunks? We didn't think about it till it was time to go to sleep. There were no bunks.
We had chartered a plane.
It's kind of an older plane, for sure.
We said this already, they said we're waiting on a welder. So he's out there working, and we're sitting, twiddling our thumbs on the thing. And finally, he's done, and we said, so is everything okay? And he goes, it'll get you there.
Flying to Akron, Ohio.
Heavy weather, instantly.
And we were circling Akron when the radio cut out.
I had gotten so drunk the night before, I was painfully hungover.
With no visibility, the guy took it up.
I think there was some smoke coming out from under the front cabin door.
We look out the window, and there's oil pouring out one of the engines.
Suddenly, everybody comes flying back into the back of the plane in a big scrum of people,
I was just lying on a bench or something in the plane, just going, oh, God.
We're in free fall forward.
I was like hoping we would crash.
When the pilot dipped below the cloud level, there happened to be a field below it, and we landed in that field.
Thank you, baby. Oh, yes, how sweet it is to be loved.
It was just dumb luck.
The pilot, I'm sure, thought we were going to die, too.
When that plane hit the ground, pilot and co-pilot quit at that point. They got off the plane, gone.
Make an album, and then the rest of the time we'd be on the road. We'd come to album tour, album tour, album tour. But it was really album tour, 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 album tour, 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 tour.
Well, Linda, you know, first of all, she'd been on the road forever at that point, and I was new to it. But, you know, she taught me the gourmet eating on a tour bus is a 1-minute hot dog in the microwave. And I said, oh, that's great. I'd never worked on a microwave and even seen one. My father, for years, was saying, no, you don't want that. Always wanted me to be a doctor or something. And I remember when I got my gig with Linda, he was being helped out by a friend of his, this builder in New York, real successful builder guy that he grew up with. And Harry came to the show, and I'm standing there with my dad, and eye makeup all over my face, and you know, sweated out. And I told him, I said, you can tell Harry Waxman, they go, kiss my ass now. I'm gonna take care of you for the rest of your fucking life. We don't need him anymore. And he was just so happy. And from then on, he was going, yeah, Bobby's a guitar player, like Glenn Campbell, you know, that's all he can say, like Glenn Campbell. He's like doing the same thing Glenn Campbell is. I went, no, not really, but kind of, you know. So from then on, he was proud and happy.
You're no good, you're no good, baby, you're no good.
The road's arduous because the shows to play are such a gift to get up in front of people and play music and see that response. And that moment you're on stage is so magic, and then suddenly you're on an 8-hour bus ride going, what do you want to watch?
Well, it's been said a lot of times by a lot of people that you don't get paid for the hour and a half, 2 hours you're on stage. You get paid for the other 22 hours.
Yeah.
And at least an 8-hour drive from one town to the next. So there'd be a poker game.
I stopped playing because I lost all the time. Terrible poker player. But Peter Asher would win like mad. He was a great poker player.
And Linda would sometimes win because she was the soberest one playing.
My secret with winning a lot was that I wasn't stoned. I was sober. You play stoned too fucking bad. You misread your hand, tough shit.
Linda got in the game one night, and she was playing along, playing away, and she called her hand incorrectly. But nobody knew that.
I get confused when they're straight beat a flush. You know, I had to keep a little list, and I'd have to keep what beat what.
I said, I've got, you know, 2 pairs, something like that. And she says, oh, I fold. And she goes, oh, wait, no, I've got 3 of a kind. I said, too late. She goes, no, come on, Waddy, that's not fair. I said, yes, it is. You blew it. And after, she goes, you know, I would have lost all respect for you if you'd given me that money. But you would have, huh? You actually respect me? She goes, well, I don't know about that, but that was real family time on that bus. We did a lot of touring for a lot of weeks together, miles and miles in the buses.
Being on the road for a significant period of time gives you an opportunity to become closer with the members that you're out on the road with, that become your road family. You know, I have to say that there's a period of time back in those days that it's a little foggy. And I'm going to blame it on Waddy. It's Waddy's fault.
It's always funny, you know, the things that become important parts of your touring life. And so much of it is the things that don't have anything to do with the gig. Because everybody kind of goes, I don't remember that venue, but God, there was that great barbecue. Well, we're in Indianapolis. Yeah, St. Elmo's Steakhouse. Oh, man, let's finish up sound check so we can go grab dinner there.
We were on the road in Wheeling, West Virginia. Not a real cosmopolitan town. I got a call from one of the guys in the band saying, hey, man, there's this strip club right across the freeway, and we're going over. You want to go? I went, nah, I don't want to go. Then Linda called me, said, anybody doing anything? Well, yeah, the guys went over to the strip club. She goes, oh, I want to go. I went, you do? She goes, yeah, I want to go. Will you take me there? I went, sure, I'll take you, yeah. So we go there, you got to run across the freeway. We walk in, and there's the lady that wants to check your IDs and stuff. So I give her my ID. And she looks at Linda, and she goes, I need your ID. And Linda, she goes, oh, I don't have any ID. I don't have anything on me. I don't have anything. And I'm looking at the lady in the booth, and I'm going, that's Linda Ronstadt. And she goes, I still need some ID. And I looked at Linda and went, sing something. And she goes, I'm going back someday. The lady goes, all right, you can go in.
I just love the road. I love walking out on the stage. And I also love the idea of playing a note live and that note's done. It's over with. It's gone out. They've heard. You go in the studio, you can hit that note, and they can scrutinize the hell out of that for a week, playing, oh, gotta move it here, gotta move it, let's tune it. I like the immediacy of live, so, you know, I would do that anytime.
Carole left James's touring band because she wanted to stay home. She had young kids.
I was at A&M working on a project. When I arrived to do this thing, they had hired a keyboard player for it, and his name was Craig Durgee. And I hit it off with Craig immediately, and I contacted Peter Asher, and I said, I think I found the guy to replace Carole.
So the four of us now are backing up James. After we do the sound check, at whatever venue we were at, James would come out and he'd make sure it's right. He could hear himself, guitar.
And James wasn't that enthusiastic about doing long sound checks or anything, so he'd come in, do a line check, play a couple tunes, split. And we were just horny as hell to play, so we just were jamming all the time.
So at one point, Peter said, listen to this. And he plays us a cassette from the board of our jams. And we said, wow, this is pretty good. And the next thing that happened is James came up with a name for it, The Section.
This is The Section, and they're gonna open up the show.
And next thing you know, Peter went and got us a record deal with Warner Brothers.
And then he got us a tour with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, opening a Canadian tour for them.
I think Warner Brothers kind of signed us just because of our pedigree and thought they were probably going to get Poco or the Burrito Brothers or the Eagles or something. Next thing you know, we handed them a band that they had no idea what the hell to do with us. We were playing pretty much rock fusion instrumental music, but we ended up with an underground cult following.
It was wonderful, but like everything, you know, you get to a point where everyone's musical interests were going in separate directions, and we did 3 records, and that was the course.
So we did like a month and a half of that. We got back to LA, and then we had 2 weeks off. In that 2 weeks, we started rehearsing with Jackson to do Running on Empty.
Running on Empty, and it was gonna be like the live album, but it's really you putting all your best songs together and some new songs. I had been using Russ and Lee on records in the studio, so to do a record on the road, I wanted to have these guys because that was my guarantee that it would sound good.
I was friends and tight with Jackson. I'd never toured with him.
And I think at some point, listening to some of the new songs, I mentioned to him, why don't you make this album just all the new songs?
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
We learned the tunes really quickly, and off we went.
I wanted to try to give a feeling for what it was like on the road.
With Running on Empty, it was like guerrilla touring.
Jackson had it in his head that he wanted to record on the bus with bus sounds. So we got on there, set up 2 mics, so Jackson and I were facing each other. Russ was playing brushes on a cardboard box or something like that.
Look, we were all in our 20s. No, there was no sleeping.
Checking into a Holiday Inn and taking the mattress and the box spring apart and leaning them up against the wall and setting the drums up in between them. Jackson would be like singing in the bathroom.
Jackson went back on the bus to record bus sound. So just him and LaDonnie drove around for a while to get bus sound. That's how nuts everyone was, you know?
We did it in a sound check. We just like it was a recording session. We figured out what we would play, and that night.
You know, when you listen to most of that record now, everybody's at the top of their game.
Running Empty sounded like a train for night after night after night.
You can sense the almost massive power of that cry. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Early 80s, we were all working like crazy.
Yeah.
That's what the days were then. It was either two or three sessions a day
Yeah.
then. So the 80s were like really plentiful music working.
But the music changed at the 80s.
Yeah.
It's just started to change. And I think we all kind of changed a little bit too. I know for myself, I started getting into songwriting more and started to produce some records. And it was a time for me of reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe you do a couple tours, but not as much as we did in the 70s.
It was a transitional time for all of us.
Yeah.
A lot of things were changing in the 80s. You know, styles were changing. The rock and the country rock that had dominated the charts in the 70s, the whole West Coast sound, there was a pushback starting to happen.
When the 80s hit and it became digital and the DX7 and all that hit, and suddenly guys weren't getting hired for work because somebody was doing it on synth, they were calling me going, if you hear of any tours, man, and I would go, you know, those seats are covered.
I saw studios closing down in LA, and I just saw things shifting. Drum machines came out. A lot of things were changing.
And at one point, I said, is this the end of rock and roll? Is this the end?
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The next thing that happened was MTV. And as soon as it came on, we had it on all day and all night, all of us, everyone. And not just people I knew, everyone had it on 24/7. And it brought excitement, it brought interest and excitement back to popular music.
Pooch decided to go in the direction of writing and production. He was not the studio guy. He had his thing that he did, and when they wanted that thing, there was nobody better.
In 1981, I was adrift. The Eagles had broken up. I was never expecting to have a solo career, and I didn't really know what I was going to do next. Peter and his then-wife, Betsy, had thrown this 4th of July party. I think it was the 4th of July, 1981, and Danny was there, and that's when he and I bonded. And he started encouraging me to make a record.
Don calls, he says, come on up. I went up there and started, ran some ideas past him. He ran some ideas past me. After a couple of hours, he says, so you want to work on this album with me? Absolutely. I think that he realized he wanted to go a total different direction than the Eagles, which is why he called me, because I don't have any Eagles stuff in me. I just don't do that. And at that point, that's when I stopped touring and stopped doing sessions.
Danny started bringing me pieces of music that he had worked on.
One of the great things about working with Henley was that anytime a new piece of gear came out, Don would turn to his aide-de-camp, Tony Tavy, and said, Tony, get one. A day later, 2 days later, it shows up. So one night I'm banging away on my Farfisa organ. I think we had the first one in the country. And one of the sounds was something called sample and hold. You'd press the key. So I took that and I went, that's interesting. What happens if you slow it down? I took that, ran it through a fuzz tone. I ran it through an echoplex. And I went, oh, wow, this is fun. I knew he wanted to write a song called Dirty Laundry. That was one of the first things he talked about with me. I started playing the music that you hear on the record. There's a knock on the door. It's like 1:30 in the morning. Bang, 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 bang. And it's Jackson. I said, dig this, man. I started playing him, the music to Dirty Laundry. He goes, well, that's it? Just that over and over again? I said, yes. It's a combination of an ass shaker with a message on top of it. When I was working with Henley, I used to realized that if I come up with a good idea, we'll go record it. If he likes it and can sing to it, bang, we're in the studio and we're starting to do it.
But whereas in the old days, you would go into the studio with a song that was completely finished, we just sort of made it up as we went along. And we did some songs that he wrote by himself. I mean, I didn't write All She Wants to Do Is Dance. He wrote that whole song.
Mix them up right in the kitchen sink, and all she wants to do is dance.
Started writing the words very quickly. I wrote all the lyrics in about 10, 15 minutes. So then, of course, we were in the studio. I went down and played it for Don and sang what I had on it. He said, "Oh, that's great. We got to record it."
And all she wants to do is, all she wants to do is dance.
When you listen to the Don Henley records, The Boys of Summer and The End of the Innocence and all that stuff, those horn sounds that he did with that synth guitar, just like mind-boggling.
One day, I'm on the 101, and I'm kind of stuck in traffic. This kid next to me, he's got the windows open, and all she wants to do is dance, is blasting out of the radio, and this kid is banging his head to it. And that was one of the highlights of my life, really, is watching somebody else groove to something I did.
The thing with technology is until you learn it, it's terrifying and it's threatening. The musicians either embraced going forward with new technologies or didn't work as much. The sounds that got created from the technology influenced both the writing and the production. And so you were either part of it or you weren't working.
Neil had heard the Don Henley stuff that I was working on, and a lot of synthesizers and different stuff.
I knew him, and I saw him with his band at Farm Aid. It's a big band sound with a lot of synthesizers. You know, it impressed me.
So he wanted to call me in because he felt I knew about that stuff, which I kind of did. The other guy I called was the great Steve Jordan. Steve and I and Neil bashed along with this synth parts, his little synclavier parts that he'd already put together. And we made this album, Landing on Water.
I think we get something going on a synclavier, and I, program a bunch of shit into it.
It was both like they were showing off their bag of toys. It's like, look what I've been doing. And, oh, well, check this out. I got this, and I got this.
And then we put that on, and then Cooch and Steve would play with that, and I might sing with it. That record is a really memorable record for me. He's not here, right? We don't want to talk about him.
No, you can talk all you want about him.
I'm telling you, I think it's great. That's one of the absolute greatest albums that I ever worked on as a musician or producer. Loved every minute of it.
In 1980, I signed a record contract with Atlantic, and so then Waddy came back into my life.
The guitar part on Edge of 17, when I first heard it in the studio in the demo that we learned the song from, the guitar part was being done with an echo. I'm not doing that. It's punk shit. Jimmy Iovine, what do you mean you're not going to do that? And I said, well, I'm going to do it like, this. And when we heard it back, it was like this kind of more physical animal version of the thing that Stevie had going.
And it was done. It was finished. And everybody was like, well, that was great.
So I didn't think about how physically demanding it was going to become. When we got out on the road, it would go for like 14, 15 minutes long. I mean, I would do it 5 minutes before she'd even come out on stage. And we get to rehearsals and we'd start doing this song, and I'm going, ow. So now, whenever we go on the road, I'm in my room for about a week and a half just doing that. I gotta be looking good. I can't be crying like a baby going, we gotta stop now.
Lips, sweet surprise. Her hands are never cold. She's got that.
Waddy, for example, as a guitar player, is one of the most solid rhythm guitar players I've ever worked with. I mean, you want an eighth note guitar and something, there is nobody that plays eighth notes better than Waddy Wachtel.
She got Betty Davis eyes.
Nico called me to come out and play on this song called Oh Sherry by Steve Perry. I said, sure, yeah. So I went out to record one and laid down the eighth notes for the basic rhythm track.
Sherry, oh,
did that, and they said, okay, that's great, man, thanks a lot. I went, what do you mean, thanks? Wait a minute, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? What about that section? What about the solo section? And Nico goes, no, he's gonna like put a saxophone there. I went, no, he's not. He goes, what? I said, he's not putting a saxophone there. I said, play the fucking tape. I know what should go there. And Steve came in and just went out of his mind and went, what? What's that? I said, that's your solo. He goes, oh man, that's great.
You want a solo that you'll never forget? The solo in Oh Sherry, the solo in Only the Lonely. All these solos that he plays are like memorable.
But that time I saw you, I knew it, you'd light my night.
And then we went on tour in Europe, and we got to England and played the Old Vic, this theater. And after the show, we go downstairs where the dressing rooms were, and there's Keith Richards standing there, and I just like, whoa. And I walked up to him and I went, wow, a Rolling Stone. I said, and we're the same height. I like that. And he goes, hey, man, good to meet you. And we got on right away. We spent a bunch of days together.
The next thing that cropped up was, hey, Keith, the Stones are not going to be doing much for a year or two. I realized that, hey, I ain't I can sit around doing nothing while Mick decides what to do. Okay, I want to put a band together now.
When Keith and I were putting the band together, the first person we thought of was Waddy.
Waddy Wachtel. I mean, that's who I want to play with.
Living down in Venice, and I get this phone call one day, British lawyer. Hello, Waddy? Yeah. And he goes, I'm such and such. I represent Keith Richards, and he's trying to find you. I said, oh, really? Well, you found me. Why don't you give him my phone number?
As soon as I found out that Waddy was, jumped at the idea, and so suddenly we had, the winos.
Keith loves what he calls the scrub. So basically, he had the scrub with Brian Jones. He had the weave with Mick Taylor. They didn't have to talk about anything. The scrub and the weave were there instantly. Just add water, it was crazy.
I mean, the thing is, when guys working together, the wonder of it was when you're looking at each other as the take ends, and you're going, like, you give that dopey look on your face, and you go, yeah. And Waddy and I are kind of like that, yeah, and that's the shit, as we call it.
Waddy's a brilliant producer, a brilliant player and a producer.
Got to produce several good albums. Gilby Clarke is one, and then The Church came along with my partner, Greg Ladani.
I watched enough producers and been involved in enough sessions that I felt that I could do that. I had the great opportunity to produce 6 albums with Jimmy Buffett and play live with him, co-write songs with him. The first album that I produced for Jimmy was an album called Fruitcakes, and we recorded it at Compass Point Studios in Nassau in the Bahamas. And Jimmy asked me to go to lunch with him, and we had a lunch of conch chowder and conch fritters. And we went for a walk on the beach. And we're walking down the beach, and he said, Russie, I only have one rule. And I said, Bubba, what's that? And he said, if it ain't fun, I ain't doing it.
Now I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcanoes blow.
He would be there and he would sing a guide vocal while we were tracking it. And then once we got the track, I would have him go in the vocal booth and just have him sing the song 3 times through, straight through without stopping him. And he would go fishing. So, he loved the process.
by the time it came round to about 84, I was doing what was to become No Jacket Required. So I wanted to make more of a dancey album. And, you know, he was the guy I called.
Unbeknownst to myself and with no premeditation, I ended up with a style and a sound that worked. When recording, I've never been afraid of the red light. I kind of look at that as like a bull looking at a red cave. Some guys choke when that red light comes on. They're playing their butts off and doing it, and as soon as that light comes on, man, they're like stumbling because it's intimidating. You've got to get the goods right at that moment.
When he was playing for Phil Collins, he was the best bass player there was. He is. He's that good.
I was signed to MCA Records. I worked with a wonderful group of musicians from Phoenix. And Bowen called me in his office and he said, I know you want to use your guys on this recording, but if you had a chance to work with Leland Sklar, why wouldn't you? And wow, you know, what an education it was to work with Leland Sklar for the first time. And to play with Russ and Leland together, you know, I felt I was, you know, that took me back to those days in high school when I was telling my friends, you know, who played bass and who played drums on those James Taylor records.
I learned a lot about how to start producing from Danny in a lot of ways. And so just doing kind of what I learned from Danny by matching a song, coming up with a new arrangement of it, and connecting it with an artist, but that's all your fault.
Ego goes out the window, because if you come in with an ego, you're not doing what you're supposed to be.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I have a huge ego, as well you know.
We would have our differences, you know, we would get into disagreements sometimes.
I got fired 3 or 4 times over the course of the 3 albums we made.
And he would occasionally do one of his little rants, and then you'd let him get it out and get it over with.
After a week or a month or something, he'd call up and go, well, let's get back to work. So that's what we would do.
You had to be careful with Danny.
Oh, Cooch was opinionated.
One of the most opinionated persons I ever met. And it suits him, you know. But he never has a moment's doubt, you know. Even if he did play a wrong note, you'd never know it, because it would be completed with a gesture of bravado.
There are guys more opinionated, but not as right about what they think.
And I think that makes Cooch what he is. And that same confidence comes across in his playing, you know.
No, he just wanted it to be good. You know, he was there like the rest of those guys. They were there for the song and for the music, and the finished product they wanted it to be the best it could be.
I started producing Don Henley, and that changed my entire life.
Leland had experiences working with Phil Collins, and Danny had experiences of working with Don Henley. You know, Waddy had experiences working with Warren on the road and stuff. So we split up sometimes, but we would always get back together for certain projects.
The Troubadour reunion tour, James and Carole. And now, for a long time, I hadn't played with Russ and Lee. And then I was astonished that this thing actually came together. We went and started playing this music, and it was like we had played it last week.
Really, all you gotta do is call, and I will be there. Yeah, yes, I'll be there.
You got a friend. I turned around, I looked out at the audience, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life. These are mothers and daughters embracing each other, couples embracing each other. They're in tears, man. And then I realized what this meant to people, what this music that we did meant to people.
When I went and saw you guys with James, was the first time when I sort of, the light bulb went off on what the rhythm section could do, because I thought I was going to focus on James, and I ended up listening to the 3 of you all night, and the light bulb went off on that's what they're doing. Like that's why you need a good rhythm section.
Love you, Steve.
But now I know that I was wrong. So now I know I was just mistaken.
Yeah, right.
It was the moment when I was like, I want to write songs, but I also want to be able to do that and understand that. So then I started learning all of Danny's parts instead of James's parts. Skip ahead 30 years or whatever. I met Danny at the Troubadour, introduced myself, and we stayed in touch. And I think it was a year later, maybe 2, when he came out for this New Year's Eve party with mutual friends. The friends said, hey, you guys both play the guitar, you should play for us. So we grabbed a couple guitars and we played for everybody. Danny said, man, that's like we've been playing together forever. And I said, we have. I've been playing with you forever.
My pal Fred Mullen was contacted by Vivid Records, said, would Danny Korchmar be interested in making a solo record? I realized I had a lot of old songs that I'd co-written with James Taylor and Don Henley, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought about it. I said, well, you know, my boys aren't going to be anywhere around. They never are. Russ and Lee, they're always gone. And amazingly, I started calling them, and they were there. They were in town. Wad was out on the road with Stevie and
making real money.
Yeah, and didn't come in until it was 3 days. We recorded the thing in 3 days. Wad came in on the last day.
And it took, you know, like 15 minutes, and then
we were playing. It sounded like us.
Yeah. Our fingers were bleeding and things were hurting, but we kind of got right back on the saddle.
It just evolved into what it is. We all love each other, and you know, we were having so much fun playing this stuff that we realized, yeah, what the fuck, let's make it a band.
Gonna shine tonight, make her mine tonight.
It's pretty amazing to me to be in the band with them, with all 4 of these guys, because I followed their careers from the start.
Steve Postel's a great addition to that lineup because he's a great producer and a great player. It's really kind of a miracle that these guys are playing in a band and doing these gigs. And if you go see them live, you know, you see that not only did they give birth to this music that they're playing, they're as much the author of these songs and of this music as the artist that they did it with.
Playing in this band has led us to all really listen to each other and find a way of playing that's going to help the band.
I think one of the things I appreciate so much about this band, there's this camaraderie and mutual respect and mutual love and understanding musically that's just so magical to me. I've never been in a situation that had this kind of a feeling.
This is the hardest band to get away with a mistake in.
Oh.
Because as soon as somebody hits a blooper,
busted.
They stick out, don't they?
Yeah.
There's one more wise guy move coming, though. Very difficult sometimes, 3 guitar players to come to an agreement, you know, and these guys can do that. My whole deal is about collaborating and working with other people and creating something with my pals, especially. To me, being a musician is a way of life. It's like a religion. It's a way of being. I never saw it as work. To me, it was a joy and a delight every minute. And I still feel that way. My goal was to play with my heroes. That was one of my major goals. To meet and play with my heroes. And I was amazingly lucky that I got to do that a lot.
It's an uphill climb.
You know, I'm stunningly proud to have played with James, Carole. Stunningly proud to have played with Jackson, Linda, You know, I can't believe I got to play with all these incredible people.
Be secure, you're never sure if it's worth it all.
I'm 73. I think I have pretty much the same feeling I did when I was a kid, in the love of it and the joy of it.
Thirsty boys.
Well, we lived in an apartment, so we could never have a dog. It's kind of like having bacon in the house. Couldn't have that either. We found this place because our horses need some room, our dogs need some room, and we got 2 of everything here. We got 2 dogs, 2 horses, and 2 chickens.
Rhoda, Arya,
We got the best eggs in town.
have earned another night's stay.
I'd like to make it very clear that I'm a man of the great indoors. I could stay in the studio all day. It's all about learning. I mean, every day, I'll hear something and finally I'll figure out the way a chord is supposed to sound, you know, or something on a record that I've been doing wrong for 40 years. And I'll go to sleep that night going, I got it right finally, you know. I have a wife who loves me, I got animals, I've got a pretty cool house. I can pay rent, I can pay my monthly bills. I've got a band full of brothers that love me, and I'm proud of all of it.
The thing I think is wonderful is, you know, I've been doing it now 51 years, and I never tire of it. You know, when that phone rings, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I can't wait to go to work, either in the studio or on tour. There's an exhilaration and an excitement that happens when you're in that environment it's impossible to explain to people if they haven't experienced it. I'd love to be some just old relic up there, just making people happy.
Just a song before I go, to whom it may concern.
If I have one regret from everything, all the opportunity that I've had in my career, it's that I didn't get to spend enough time at home with any of my kids.
We had to get back home.
And you pay for it. You know, you do your best to make up the time, but you don't get those moments back. My goals now are just to be consistent and to spend as much time at home as I spend away. That's one of the great things about having this band, The Immediate Family, right now, is that we have an opportunity kind of just to do that. Most of our careers were being on the back line, supporting other artists. This was an opportunity for us to do something that was ours.
I love the shit out of that. Yeah. It's fucking cool. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world that I'm still, that I'm able to play, not just play, but play with these, you know, with my best friends. So that's what motivates me to keep going, is the idea that I can express myself in the immediate family, in that band.
When you look back in hindsight, people ask me that a lot. Did you know that, you know, those songs were going to be so important, or those records were going to be so big? And I didn't know then. I was just happy to be there.
I can look at a song I played in 1973 today and go, I wouldn't play that song that way today. But in 1973, that was exactly how I was playing, and that's what I did. I would just move on to what's now.
I had no idea that we'd be in a band at this point. I had no idea that I'd still be able to play at 72, or would even want to. I don't think you retire for this business. I don't know anybody who's happily retired from music business.
I didn't think too much about the first hurrah, so I definitely don't think too much about the last hurrah. To me, it's all hurrah, all the way down the line.
You should strive to do something that makes you happy. That's so important to the human psyche, that what your work is, it inspires you and makes you happy.
But this is our band, and we're doing now what we wanted to do forever.
Russ said to me at one point, just as a friend, he said, like, whenever you do make your record, you know, don't forget, I want to play with you. And that meant the world.
Our musical life, and he does every album I've ever done with me. So it's like, you know, we collaborate, and I can't really imagine, you know, I can't imagine my life without him.
So and all I can express is admiration for these guys.
I feel really lucky that they've played with me at all over the years.
All I know is as soon as I encountered them, I wanted them. They were better players than everybody else. Simply that.
I can't overemphasize the importance of the role that Danny played in my solo career. I mean, again, I'd never planned on having a solo career. I didn't feel like a solo act. And he coaxed me and encouraged me and pushed me in that direction, and gathered all these great musicians around me who were supportive. And, you know, I'm as the years go by, I look back on it, and I'm more and more appreciative of the contribution that he made. And so that's why so many people wanted to work with him.
What does family mean to you?
Well, it's a tricky question. I mean, my mom died when I was 6 years old. Right after the guitar incident, she pretty much was out of commission for about a year, and she died when I was 6. And so family to me means my dad and my brother, and the three of us arguing our way through life, you know, and that was family until I met these guys, really.
The word family means commitment, means priority, you know, and of course all the other things, love.
How I wish I could, but you're so far away.
You know, there is something, you know, you can't get, you know, any other way than just playing together and enjoying each other's company.
Much of anything that's new.
We were each other's only resource. We had to be friends with each other because we were the only people we knew.
I'd rather spend it being close to you, but you're so.
I'm basically looking at 3 other guys that I've been on a stage with for 50 years, and loving every moment of being with them.
I could get a hipper, younger people.
in this hotel.
Yeah. To play this stuff, you know. But these are the people that play it best, and these are my best friends, and so I don't need anybody else. Hey, dude.
Nothing else to do but close my mind.
Put your hands together and welcome to the stage, the immediate family.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah, it truly is
a golden age.
Yeah. Okay, that's a wrap.
Yes, good job.
All right,
Thanks for lunch.
mountains of fame, to the river so deep. I must be looking for something, something sacred I lost. But the river is wide, and it's too hard to cross. Even though I know the river is wide, I walk down every evening and stand on the shore. I try to cross to the opposite side so I can finally find what I've been looking for. In the middle of the night, I go walking in my sleep through the valley of fear.
Look at, hey, it's me. Santa, I'm begging of you this year, please, would you get 3 guitar tuners? I know you're gonna do the good thing because I've been a good boy. You've got your helpers here like I do. I see Postel, I see Cooch, I see Waddy. There's Russell up there, it's fantastic. Watch the diet there, you're getting a little funky. Okay, but too much pizza.
That's right, you're not from Texas. That's right, you're not from Texas. That's right, you're not from Texas. But Texas wants you anyway. That's right, you're not from Texas. That's right, you're not from Texas. That's right, you're not from Texas. Texas wants you anyway. So I was born and raised in Texas, and it means so much to me. And though my girl comes from down in Georgia, we were up in Tennessee. And as we were driving down the highway, she asked me, baby, what's so great? How come you're always